because if we don't really make our landscapes climate resilient, they won't work as carbon sinks, and biodiversity will be at risk. And if we improve biodiversity in the right way, we also have benefits for both climate mitigation and climate adaptation. And I think this is very much what today's seminar is also about. And so we've got, a fairly comprehensive framework, really, consisting at the biodiversity level of the EU biodiversity strategy, the proposal for a nature restoration law, criteria and guidance for new protected areas, and upcoming guidance on afforestation, Natura 2000, and climate change, and so on. My colleagues in DG Klima, who work on mitigation, on the carbon sink function of the land, working to enhance our famous LULUCF framework, land use change and forestry, to capture also co-benefits with adaptation mitigation. There is the European climate law, and we expect soon to have a legal proposal on for the carbon farming initiative, to have a framework for methods to certify carbon removals by land use, and to bring this into the LULUCF framework, so that land managers become sort of something like accredited carbon savings, which they then can use for upcoming carbon markets and so on. And on adaptation, I did mention the European climate law and the EU adaptation strategy. We also have a fairly funded adaptation mission under our research and innovation framework program, Horizon Europe, which we use to make regions and local communities more climate resilient. We work on our climate adaptation platform, Climate Adapt platform, to exchange knowledges, good practices, and share really our insights. And we have engaged with the European Environment Agency on an EU climate risk assessment, which will be published in early 2024, where we look at the big risks for the Green Deal and the big sort of needs to address climate adaptation in 2024. And next and last slide, please. Can I have my next slide, please? Yeah, okay, thank you. It's coming up. So wonderful. So the speaking of risk, and that brings me a bit back. If we look at extensive livestock farming and adaptation, and this is a live project, and it is not the first live project. There's a couple of others. Three major points or aspects which I'd really like to highlight in all of these projects is that it's important for each project and for all our activities that we are very clear about sort of the specific climate risk and vulnerabilities which we address through our actions. So Vicente also mentioned that already. We have risks also to livestock farming. There are droughts, there are maybe risks from flash floods, there are maybe risks from heat waves. So livestock farming can contribute to adaptation, but in itself it is also exposed to risks. So how do we address these risks? What are these risks? How do we address them? They are also, and we have also to speak a bit about that. Of course, there are certain risks by livestock farming, and we need to make livestock farming extensive enough to not lead to overgrazing. So this is, I think, a requirement. And of course, livestock farming is a great opportunity to contribute to adaptation and to make landscapes less vulnerable and more resilient to climate change. And I spoke here of wildfires, but also possibilities to enhance soil carbon. And so really, I think good projects are those projects where we are very clear about our risks, where we are clear about what we are doing is suitable to address these risks, and to reduce them and to take advantage of the opportunities. And the third requirement to live project proposals is always that we ask projects to monitor and evaluate regularly what we are doing, because landscapes and ecosystems are non-linear and dynamic systems. We do often not know exactly how they react. We've got fairly good ideas, but there are many surprises. So a core requirement is that any good project really does a regular monitoring to see what we are doing. Is what we are doing really sort of bringing us on the right trajectory, or will we need to correct our action and adapt ourselves to work in support of adaptation? So I thought these are sort of a couple of points which I wanted to make. I hope that was interesting. Back to the floor, and I'm looking forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was really very comprehensive. You even highlighted in the beginning some of the benefits of extensive livestock farming, which we'll be hearing in a couple of minutes. The fire resilience, the carbon sink. I'm really glad to hear that it's about to come, the carbon farming initiative, and we'll certainly have a chance to discuss it in the roundtable. Meanwhile, I haven't checked if you have made your questions already, but please go ahead, use the Q&A, write your questions down for Peter, and all the others, you can thumbs up the questions you like the most, and we'll be looking at them. For now, and because the last slide of Peter was all about the live projects that happened and the future ones that will try and implement new methods for adaptation, I'm very pleased to introduce you Mireia Llorente. Mireia is from Fundación Entre Tantos. She will talk about the climate differentiation. Not all extensive livestock farming is the same, and she will show us what are the main differences between an intensive and an extensive system, but she will especially tell us about one of the latest outputs of the project, which is the action plan for the adaptation of extensive livestock farming. So Mireia, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. You can share your screen. Mireia, we can't. Yeah, now yes.
Okay. Now I think I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, but put it in presentation mode.
Sorry.
If not, we can see it like that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now, I think now. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry. Good morning to everyone. My name is Mireia Llorente. I'm working with Fundación Entre Tantos. And as Barbara told you, I'm going to speak a little bit about the LifeAdapt project. But also I want to speak now about the differentiation and climate responsibility of extensive livestock farming. As Barbara told you, one of the main products of the LifeAdapt project was an strategic action plan, the strategic action plan for the adaptation of extensive livestock farming to climate change. For the development of this strategic plan, we take really care to have a real participatory process. We have taken care to involve all key stakeholders and society as a whole in the elaboration of a set of recommendations that currently form part of that plan. Its development has been accompanied by a group of more than 20 experts in the field from the beginning of the plan to the last revisions of the document. And the plan is addressed at competent authorities for the implementation of actions to promote the adaptation of extensive livestock to climate change. Now we have the complete plan that is available in the website of the project, of the Live project. And it's available in 3 languages, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And the plan is organized in 4 strategic lines. Each strategic line is organized also in a collection of strategic actions. In that final conference of the project, we have tried to address each of the key issues in relation of these strategic lines and actions. And now I'm going to focus on one of these strategic actions, which deals with the need to do a fair allocation of climate responsibility of extensive farming, based in the differentiation of the models of farming. Sorry, but now I can't change the slide.
Yeah, go and open your PowerPoint. I think sometimes the mouse cuts out. Yeah.
Now you can see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, we can.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay.
Okay, let's go. According to IPCC and other international organizations, livestock is responsible of 9 to 14% of greenhouse gases. But as we told, the management systems of the livestock could be very different. It's not the same. The management systems linked to the territory, and the management systems very industrialized with a very intensive livestock is not the same, and the footprint is highly variable, and these have to be taken into account. It's not the same the landscapes that generate one kind of livestock management and the other one. It's not the same the social relationship are not the same, the care to biodiversity, the beauty, the resilience of the ecosystems, or the habitability of the territorials. So we need a differentiation for a fair attribution of climate responsibility and for fair accountability to extensive livestock farming in accordance with its characteristic, specifically its role in managing carbon storing ecosystems and its high degree of autonomy from global input chain. In that slide, in the right side in the figure, we can see some data comparing the industrial farming model and extensive farming model in relation of the greenhouse gas emission balance. As we can see here, the main part of the greenhouse gas emissions are derived of the land use change for feeding the animals, and also for the life cycle carbon footprint of the production of the feed of the animals. Is that the reason for that the extensive have not so high level of emissions, but the institutions now are not taking into account the carbon footprint of the feeding of animals. So when livestock is responsible of maintenance of the ecosystems, we must incorporate the carbon sequestration of the system in the footprint of the animal products also. So now, what is wrong or ignored for a fair assignation of emissions in the livestock? One, we need a full life cycle analysis of livestock that graze versus it feed is not the same. Two, we need to have into account the carbon sequestration in soils and the biomass of the ecosystem that are being conserved for the livestock. 3, we have to take into account the methane oxidation in soils. The methane is the most strong greenhouse gas, and healthy soils and good conservation ecosystems are oxiding the methane, and this have to be taken into account. For the emissions avoided by wildfire prevention, the livestock, extensive livestock is preventing wildfire, and that also have to be taken into account. 5, below meat and below carbon ecosystem services are not the same. And 6, the baselines. If grazing animals are removed, the result will be more fermentation by wild ruminants, who also generate methane. Sorry, again, I cannot move my presentation. Sorry. So what we need now? We need a full life cycle analysis of different livestock management models. Also, we need a deepen the knowledge of the carbon storage capacity and also the methane oxidation capacity of rangelands, pastoral soils, and the link with grazing. Also, we need to incorporate carbon sequestration in carbon footprint calculation tools at both levels, international institutions and private certification. And also, we need to generate accessible and open regional databases for calculating the content of organic matter in soils and improve the international databases and tools. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mireia. The document that Mireia just presented is available on LifeAdapt website, as well as a lot of other materials that were produced throughout the project. So do take a look at lifeadapt.eu and you'll be able to download those recommendations and the other project outputs. Mireia, thank you very much. When we started working with Mireia and Fundación Entre Tantos, we were completely caught up by their campaign, No es lo mismo, it's not the same. This is something that Spain, for example, is leading by example, especially if we compare it with initiatives that are similarly occurring in Portugal or in France. But if I compare it with Portuguese reality, Spain is much more ahead in the sense of promoting the differentiation of this project. Indeed, it is not the same. But when a consumer goes to the supermarket and buys his meat, he is probably not aware of the differences and the impact that the meat that he bought at a cheap price had on the environment. So indeed, there is a big path and a big challenge ahead of us to make possible for consumers to look at the differences and to use those differences as a selective argument when they buy their meat. We'll be looking at this in detail, how we can better show and highlight the benefits of extensive livestock to the consumers on our second panel. For now, we'll keep on the ecosystem services part. And for that, I would like to invite again Vicente Rodriguez to turn on his camera and show us a second presentation about environmental services that extensive livestock farming offer us and the society. Vicente, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, now I would like to begin with a definition of environmental services. Environmental services refer to qualitative functions of non-produced assets of land, water, and air, including ecosystem and their biota. Second, I want to show you the research timeline about this topic, which began to have published papers in 1996 and with an increase of these publications at the beginning of this century. So it's a relatively new topic, but very important for our society. If we look for pastoral lands and natural protected areas, such as the European Network Nature 2000, of core breeding and resting sites for rare and threatened species, we find a geographical coincidence. This is because many pastures are hot points for biodiversity. Let me show a couple of examples. In 2016, we celebrated a BioBleed, which is a marathon to identify as many species as possible within 24 hours. It was celebrated in San Francisco Farm, where 734 different species were found and identified on this Dehesa farm with organic cattle, sheep, and free-range pigs. This number of species was identified by 130 naturalists within 24 hours. 243 species were herbaceous plants, weeds, grasses, and so on. Focusing our attention on the grasses and weeds, we can find that the highest biodiversity of Mediterranean ecosystems is found in the grass communities and in the invertebrates that live in the grasslands. We can find other species, important species, threatened species, but we would like to focus on dung beetles. This has been another activity of the project LifeLiveAdapt to evaluate the health of the dung beetles populations of our 10 pilot farms. These species are very important for the ecosystems to maintain the equilibrium of the soil and to recover, to recycle feces of the animals, but are being severely affected by veterinary antiparasitic treatments, mainly by ivermectins that should be limited to certain circumstances of animal health, but not so easily used. To maintain the levels of biodiversity, it's key. Well, sorry, this is the number of species we have identified in the pilot farms. 4 species and a total of 40,000 of different individuals. In the picture, we can see the percentage of biomass of the different collected species. You can see Boas bison, which is an important species, is about 4th part of the biomass detected, collected, and a couple of Boas bison can destroy a dung of a cattle dung in 24 hours or 48 hours. So it's a very important species to maintain the equilibrium of the grasslands, as we can see here in that image. Okay. To maintain these levels of biodiversity, it is key to have low stocking rates and to try to raise domestic ruminants just grazing fodder without competing with humans for grains. But without a clear regulations, we can see in our fields circumstances like this: sheep directly eating grains and competing with humans for grains. We have designed 3 apps innovations for livestock management in the LifeAdapt project. One is LiveSmart to calculate stocking rates and to have an overview of the fodder production of every farm. A calculator of sustainability, which is a good tool to know our adaptation to climate change, our level of mitigation of climate change, and the environmental issues of our farm. And finally, a calculator of parasite risk, which helps us to decide if we need to treat our animals or we can avoid anti-parasite treatments. Grazing animals, the grazing diet of our livestock animals prevent fire risk. For example, 1 hectare of Mediterranean forest burned emits 30 tons of CO2 equivalents. However, the soil organic carbon of pastures is in Spain is similar to that of forest and much higher than in crops, both for herbaceous and woody crops. So that means if we maintain our livestock, extensive livestock farming, we have a contribution to climate change mitigation. So, if we abandon extensive livestock farming, we lose this fire prevention, as we can see in this image. With grazing animals, we don't have important fires. But if we abandon pastures and meadows, we have a problem. And we are abandoning pastures and grasslands across Europe. Considering these facts, we can conclude by saying that extensive livestock farming maintains biodiversity while helping climate change mitigation. Therefore, we need to make efforts to promote policies to support extensive livestock benefits, considering it is positive for the whole of society, even if they don't consume animal products. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vicente. Well, Vicente told us all about 3 innovative tools that we tested out during this project, and also how they are able to support farmers better managing their properties. Indeed, the image, it was a bit shocking, right? The image of the sheep grazing on grains, which is not the direction that we want extensive livestock to go. So it's maintaining soil in good health is absolutely necessary if we want extensive livestock to produce its benefits. It's pointless to have animals outside if in the end we feed them on food that was imported, shipped from somewhere else, increasing greenhouse gas emissions and competing directly with human food. So that's not the ideal scenario. The ideal scenario is to support farmers really working on improving their soil. I remember a couple of months ago in an initiative of LifeAdapt, there was a farmer that we interviewed and we invited to a conference, and he said, my main product is not the animals. My main product is the soil. And this is, I use the animals to manage my soil in a way that it's sustainable, it's renewable, and it delivers benefits to society and the environment. So we might need to shift a bit this mindset on producing food in quantity or delivering good environmental services. And that's why the news that Peter told us about the carbon farming initiative might be very exciting, because so far, unfortunately, the Common Agricultural Policy seems to praise more on quantity than on the quality of the services delivered. So some food for thought to us all. And meanwhile, I would like you to prompt you to go to the Q&As, keep on writing your questions, eventually write your comments like Martin just did. And he commented that in France, many butchers put signs and they show the traceability somehow or the origin of the meat. So let us know in your countries, which are the examples that you've been looking at or that you've been seeing popping out. Tell us about the difficulties that you are facing, because I know many of you attending this conference today are yourself working in this sector. So do let us know what's going on in your country and do let us know your questions. And before I ask our last participant of this panel to come up, I just would like to reinforce the visit to the website. Apart from the tools and the apps that Vicente Rodriguez showed you that will better support farmers in their management systems, there is also a manifesto that was produced in September this year. We brought together 10 life projects who are also themselves focusing on finding solutions for climate change adaptation throughout Europe. And we made this manifesto to show up the really needs that this activity has in order to keep on delivering the biodiversity benefits that that characterizes this system. So do take a look at the manifesto. For those who receive the confirmation email, you might also have it there with a link. It's also available in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Okay, thank you very much, Vicente, once more. And we'll move now to the last presentation of this panel. I will invite Patricia Mora to turn on her camera. Patricia is from Inogestiona. Inogestiona is one of the project partners as well. And Patricia will tell us how can we improve climate adaptation and extensive livestock farms. So let's go a bit deeper into the farming level. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Barbara. I'll try to share now my presentation.
Yes.
Is it there?
It says it started. Yeah, now just put it in presenters mode and we'll be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll have to start again because it was supposed to be on presenters mode.
No, no worries. You can also present it like that. No,
no, it's just a second. Just a second.
Okay.
Sorry. Finally, one of these days we managed to do this fluently. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much to the whole team from Mértola, from the Adpm. The organization of this conference was really something that we were really looking forward to in the whole project, because we've been working already for 4 years together, and we've been working on trying to look for solutions for the livestock extensive farms in the south of Europe. And in our case, as the partners, one of our missions was to try to establish a real interest, or the best way of monitoring what's happening in the farms. You know, we have 10 farms we're working on, mostly in Portugal and the south of Spain, and we are trying to establish exactly what's happening, and trying to monitor very well, as Peter was commenting before, what is happening during the project, and trying to establish exactly what we need to bring as a message to the outside world to be able to be efficient in our goal. No, so now at the end of the project, I think we have quite a clear view, and I'll try to do that, to comment this as best I can. I'm trying to change my slide, but it's not working very well. Does it change?
Yes.
Okay. So first and main problem that we identified during the project is definitely water scarcity. You have to understand this is a problem which is connected to the area we're working with, and the problem is that it's not a European problem for the whole of Europe. And this is something we need to understand, because it makes it difficult for everybody to share this concern. It's not so easy to get the message through when it's not something which is happening everywhere. This is something which is happening, but in a very severe way in the south of Europe. And to give you an idea what's been happening during the time of the project, not to add to the situation we had when we started, we've had people, the farmers, having to support costs of investments for water management systems within the farms and water collection systems within the farms, costs which have been increased for more than 1,000%. So they've gone from spending about 300 to 400 euros yearly to more than 4,000, 5,000 euros yearly. This is something I need to stress, because it's, I think, not only we're talking about animal drinking water, we're not talking about the rainfall, we're talking about or pasture or grazing surface maintenance. We're actually talking about the drinking water of the animals. So this is, I would say, probably the most urgent need, and what we need to work on in the future as soon as we can, and in the best way possible. I was very happy to hear Peter talking about the way we are trying to, let's say, increase the speed of how we're going to work on adaptation. So here we have a few data on what we think we should be prioritizing. Definitely water governance aspects, and supporting farmers on how to access water. Supporting management infrastructures, and all kinds of, let's say, practices which can help. To give you an idea of what water consumption means in this case, we had an international congress in Cordoba just a few weeks ago, which I also recommend to come into our website and look into the presentations. And there was the authority from the Guadiana River Basin, which is in the south of Spain. It's a very representative basin of what's happening in the south of Europe. The water consumption coming from the livestock, and we're not talking only about the extensive livestock, this is the whole kind of livestock farming, which is including industrial, obviously. Would only be 1.6 of the basin, when that's a yearly amount. And when we're talking about irrigation, it would be an 87.6% of water consumption. So just to give us an idea of what we're talking about, and let's say how easy it could be to change a little bit the situation and make it a little less anxious for people to keep the farm working. Obviously, one of the things that is making it more complicated to keep the farm is having to spend money on trying to get access to water. Quality of water is also obviously a problem, but I would say probably would be a different degree of problem. No? One of the things we try to be doing in our project is also not only looking into the regulations or policy problems, as Mireia already talked about, and all the understanding of the whole extensive livestock situation, as Vicente already explained, with all the environmental services provided, and all the rest of the carbon balance aspects we need to talk about. We also try to go into pilot very concrete solutions, and one of them we've developed during the project is what we call the LiveAdapt device, which is basically a very simple system where you seal a slope. Doesn't necessarily need to be a very steep slope or a large area, and once it's sealed, the rainwater comes into a underground storage system, which is served by a solar pump, and it can serve automatically water to the animals to drink during the summer when there's a scarcity of access to water, and it also avoids the interactions between wildlife and farm animals, and therefore reducing the risk of diseases. And also it's a very simple and a very easy to install system, because it can be installed almost anywhere in the farm. It doesn't really need any kind of requirements. And up to now, we've been testing it in a farm in Mérida. It's been tested for 3 summers already, and it's using very, very little maintenance. We didn't really need to do anything to it, and the animals are happy because they have an ear tag which communicates with the system, and as soon as they come near to the system, it provides water for the animal to drink. And we think this kind of a device, not necessarily this one, but any kind that can help in a way to access water in different parts of the farm, are going to be probably one of the solutions for the future. In another solution we've been working with is the shading of ponds. Ponds is a traditional way of giving access to water for the animals in our area, and we've been shading them with a natural, the first cork coming from the cork tree, which is called and has a very low price in the market. So it's not exactly a valuable product for the farmer. And we've been working on measuring how much it can avoid if you use it for shading the ponds, how it can reduce transpiration. And we've come out with figures of over 30%. So it's a very interesting solution. It's something that can have very little cost for the farmer. And this is taken into account that we only shaded the half of the pond, because we wanted to allow oxygenation, and also to be able to measure how the rest of what the water quality responded, and how little animals and birds and insects responded, which has turned out also very nice and very interesting. We also have information about this on our webpage if you're interested, but we already know that at least the farms in our project are going to install this kind of solution. This is only one of the solutions that we've been working on during the project. There's more than 40 different good practices, which you can access also on the web page, and I recommend that you go into that. So anyway, these are solutions concerning water, and what I would like to talk about today also is that we really need to go a lot into other needs, which are also complex to solve, which is training needs for these kind of multifunctional systems. They are very complex. They demand huge amount of information and training by farmers. It's an increasing load, because climate change is only making it more complicated, and also the speed of climate change is probably an extra stress for them. So we really think training is one of the aspects we need to work more in the future. We're talking about having professional farmers which can really increase the speed of transferability of all the research and all the needed knowledge that is coming out from the different agents and different researchers, because if not, it is very difficult that we really manage to go into transfer to the whole community of farmers. So we think professionalization and lifelong learning is one of the things we need to work on in the future. Both, obviously, generational replacement, you can imagine, is one of the most important challenges. So working on that, we think, is also one of the priorities and one of the challenges we should be facing, and what we should be working on. And as Mireia already talked about, we also think it's very important that we start thinking that we go deeper into a better understanding and measurement of the carbon balance and the positive impact of these kind of systems, because it is, if not, it's going to be difficult to let's say help them in this in their feasibility for the future. To end, yes, this is talking about trying to establish exactly how much of these systems are helping to mitigate the climate change, and then obviously from there going into adaptation. No? Finally, we would like to only mention another aspect that we think is very important in these kind of systems. We understand these systems as not only important biodiversity providers, but also as the managers really of landscapes and ecosystems and valuable Nature 2000 areas. They are areas which are managed by farmers, and we need to treat them with the importance that they have, no? And we think also that these landscapes have a very close relation to what can be even human health, and we need to explore, we think, that aspect also when we go into extensive livestock landscapes. Basically, as a conclusion, we would say that after working with these farmers for all this time, we are going in the right direction, but probably not fast enough, and we need to concentrate on the most urgent needs. We really think this kind of system needs a special protection and some kind of specific strategy, because if not, it is definitely in a very endangered situation at this point. Okay, this is all I need to say today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. The tools that you shared are quite interesting. It made me thought, like, how with all ponds in the southern part of Portugal and Spain and France would be covered with cork. Apart from the benefits to biodiversity, because I can imagine some birds, some amphibians, they could use it. Apart from that, it really slows down the evaporation. And as we've seen in Peter's presentation, drought is one of the main threats that we face, especially in the Mediterranean basin. So water management is of utmost importance. So thank you very much, Patricia, for sharing with us the systems that Inogestiona and the project partners have been trying out.
Thank you,
Barbara. Thank you. So this was all from the panelist side. I would now ask you all who have presented to turn on your cameras, because we will start our roundtable. Okay? Meanwhile, for those who have not yet written any question, come on, people, we are 100 people in this room and there are only 3 questions. Are you still sleeping? Don't you have any questions? Well, I will start with the first question. I think it's directed to Peter specifically. Peter Ilesia, sorry if I misspell it, asked many things about the new Industrial Emissions Directive 2027. Are you aware of this, right?
Yeah, no, I read the question. This is a very good question. I'm afraid it's probably asked to the wrong person. We would need really a colleague from DG Environment working on the directive in the room to give a competent answer. All I can say is really that I'm just slightly aware of the planned extension of the Commission put out its proposal. I think it was in April this year, and to regulate or sort of tighten actually the rules on how industrial emissions are regulated, because and industrial emissions include I think something like 20,000 poultry and pig farms, largely large-scale livestock farms. And I think there was a continuous concern that these plants, these large-scale plants, are still sort of responsible for a very large share of Europe's air pollution, but also to some degree greenhouse gas emissions. And I think the Commission's proposal was really to include many more farms into the scope of the directive, farms of I think from 100 livestock units on, and that would increase, I think, the scope of the directive from 20,000 to roughly 180,000, I think. The Commission's proposal is now with the co-legislators, i.e. the member states in the Council and the European Parliament, who decide and actually may modify also this proposal, and ultimately will decide on it. And I think the agriculture ministries were opposing really this extension. So there's a bit of a conflict. I can paste in the chat from the Commission website sort of a questions and answer page, which hopefully helps a bit answer some of these questions. But really, if it were to go into detail, I would suggest contacting the colleagues from DG Environment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, I think this one is directed to Vicente. Vicente, do we within the project, we have a carbon footprint calculator for farmers?
No, we don't have, because this is a complex calculation. So it needs an expert to do the calculations, and we cannot design a simple calculator for farmers. It requires an expert behind the system. We calculate adaptation to climate change, sustainability, and mitigation, but no carbon footprint. That is quite difficult. Mireia she's an expert, so she can give us her opinion as well.
Well, we don't have a great tool for calculation of footprint of livestock currently. There are a good development of methodologies from IPCC for this calculation, but this methodology currently have a great lag in the points that I speak about in my speech. About methane oxidation, have no consideration. We need a complete life cycle analysis of feed of the livestock, and also have a poor consideration of the carbon sequestration in soils and the relation between soils and grazing. So we have a lot of work to do in the future in this sense.
Thank you, Mireia. Apart from that, we still have 3 important tools. My question to you, Vicente, is, will these tools be available to other farmers, and how is the project or the Afterlife project plan foreseeing the promotion and the usability of these management tools?
Well, at the moment we have technical support to teach farmers to use the 3 tools, and the most important one, in my opinion, is the LiveSmart calculator, which helps farmers to calculate their stocking rate and the further production. This has been developed by PicCham Pro Europe, and they have an expert helping farmers to deal with this application. So they can write an email asking for support, and they will carry on giving this support during the Afterlife project. But they need farmers, they need to ask for help, obviously. We cannot call them if they don't have interest.
Of course. Well, and that's sometimes farmers are not really aware, or they do not join this kind of initiative. So it's actually the responsibility, many times, is the responsibility of other NGOs or cooperatives of producers, or even businesses that support farmers, who have the responsibility to bring these innovative tools to farmers. So this is also a call to action to all of you who are with us. The tools are there. And if you think there are farmers who could make good use of those tools, do contact LifeAdapt, and we will guide you to the right people to help you. And this leads me to my next question to you, Patricia. Are these solutions for water management that you presented also available to other farmers? So the project tested those, but what about now? Is there a possibility of implementing it in other farmers?
Yes, of course. The idea is to have this. We're going to continue working on communicating what's happening and what we have as solutions. They are very simple solutions, but we definitely want to have them available. We actually in 2 regions in Spain already. The authorities already expressed their interest to actually support this kind of activities. We were only in Portugal last week, and they're going to try also there to try to look for support. It's something which is we think before next summer we need to try to get as much done as possible in that sense. But also we think we need to work on governance. We need to work on the breaking through the idea that we need to change the priorities of how we use water in the south, at least, because we just can't wait any longer, basically. And the irrigation, is still a priority over here. There are still a lot of projects which are starting to be that are starting now and that are being approved by environmental authorities and basin authorities. And we need to talk about this. We need to discuss, and we need to have all the data we can. That's also something I would like to say. We need data. We need to have as much, because we've been working with our 10 pilot cases. We've had all the input we've had with the contact of farmers. We've had the Congress. We've had access at least to 200 farmers. But as to take decisions, we need to take also statistics. So it's important that we have that kind of data also. So yes, we're going to continue working definitely on water.
Well, the new EU climate adaptation strategy emphasizes a lot the need to gather new data. And with this, I would like to connect to Peter. Peter, Patricia just mentioned something very important, and those who live in southern countries really see this happening in southern Portugal. The intensive cultivation of, for example, olive trees or avocados or other extensive or intensive plantations actually are growing, and they are consuming a lot of water resources. In one hand, we want a competitive agriculture, but on the other hand, we are damaging the environment. I know you within the European Commission, and you and all your colleagues, sometimes it's hard because you do create policies, but then the way they are translated and implemented at a national level, it's not always easy to follow, or they're not the best way of doing. How do you react to this, and what are the legal instruments that the European Commission has to do something to this regards, to act on? Oh, I think you are mute. Yeah.
We never learn it, do we? No, absolutely. And this is a good question. I'm very glad also that Patricia raised, I think, a number of extremely pertinent points when it comes to adaptation, because we spoke a lot also about carbon farming and all that, but this is sort of a bit of a different policy field. And our concern is really sort of the impacts of climate change, which are coming now on. And water is really a horizontal theme. I think water is an essential theme. I don't need to tell you really. But what we realized is also that the drought of this year and the droughts of 2018-19 affected also Central Europe, and I think we're all in the same boat here. The drought is a major concern, and I agree with Patricia. We need to rethink water policies overall. Really, if we move to a system. Traditionally, a lot of water policy was geared to sort of extract and make water available to sort of intensive agriculture. You know, this is certainly not sustainable in a context where we have fewer and fewer water resources. And so we see in the negotiations around the CAP strategic plans a lot of pressure to expand irrigation and also to engage in more dam building and reservoir building. And our view on that is that this risks even becoming maladaptation, because you take water away from other parts of the landscape and you channel it into one single use, which is highly water demanding. So we will need to rethink the landscape level hydrology really altogether. And I think one of the solutions, we always speak about nature-based solutions. You know, wetland restoration has a lot of potential, and we think we need to improve the ability of the landscape altogether and of ecosystems altogether to keep water. And that means restoring wetlands, improving soil carbon, of course, and also, I mean, Patricia mentioned governance, and I don't need to talk about illegal water extraction in southern Spain in particular. You know, there are major problems quite clearly here. So all of this needs to be addressed. At the EU level, well, I mean, you know, it works. We are sort of very remote, and you have a fair point. I mean, all of these things need to be done in a local and regional context, which is always different. So European legal frameworks are that, European legal frameworks. In most cases, like, you know, the Water Framework Directive, this needs to be transposed by member states. So we see very much member states and the legislators in member states and member state governments here in the duty. Of course, I also mentioned sort of the landscape level approach before in this Prague conference. We do need integrated plans, really, better plans and better implementation of plans at the regional level. If worst comes to the worst, the EU level can always, you know, act with an infringement, and we can take legal action, but it takes a lot of time, of course. So that's what I meant before. Adaptation is it needs to be systemic in the sense that of course we try to improve our frameworks here and to come in when we can at the EU level, but a lot really hinges also on policy implementation at the national level and the community level. Say, you know, take the autonomías in Spain.
Yeah.
And so this is how it needs to work. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Now, sometimes it's comes a bit of a despair, right, when we see like so many good EU policies being translated into poor activities on the ground. But that's also why we are here, and that's also why LifeAdapt brought in so many people from different views and different organization types to try to find solutions that could answer to these challenges.
Absolutely, and I think this is why we fund these live projects. And I think, you know, Patricia mentioned a couple of solutions, and Vicente, and you know, there's a lot of value also in bottom-up work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you very much for your excellent presentations and for the debate that we have just generated. I think we are a bit later in the schedule. I would like to still give people the opportunity to take a 5-minute break before we start the second panel, okay? Go stretch your legs, stretch your arms, get some water or some tea. And we see us at 10:35, okay, punctually. You don't have to leave the room, just leave everything as it is, and we'll be back at 10:35. Is that okay?
I will need to leave you. I have other duties, I'm afraid, but you're in the safe hands of my colleagues from DG Agri, I think, for the second session. So many thanks again for the exchange, and I look forward to continue contact. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you, Peter.
Really important. Thank you.
10:35 is in Portugal.
Oh, sorry, 11:35. Sorry, because I'm looking at. Yes,
don't worry. Thank you.
11:35.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hola, Carlos. Hola. Hi, Isabel. I think you can hear us now.
Hello, yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, and I just see I have been promoted to panelist, so now I can share my screen. Can you see me?
I can see you, yes.
Okay, because I cannot see. Okay, perfect.
We just gave a 5 minutes break for people to freshen up.
Yeah, so I was connected to the end of the previous panel, so I could
Right.
I could hear that there's a break, but okay, I'm ready on my side.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I sent you the before knowing I would be promoted. I sent you my PowerPoint, but now that I will do it myself, so I will share my screen
That
myself.
would be easier. If you have any problem, then I can.
No, not at all. It was just in case there was technically it was not possible. But now that I can do it, I think it's better that I do it instead of having to ask you to next slide each time. So
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much, Carlos.
lovely.
Okay.
See you.
Isabel, bem-vinda.
Olá, Bárbara, muito obrigada. Bom dia.
Bom dia. Pronto, nós estamos aqui em pausa, faltam-nos 2 minutos.
Sim. Eu estive a acompanhar um bocadinho o painel anterior, já só algumas partes, portanto não ouvi tudo, e percebi que tínhamos aqui uma pequena pausa até às 11h35. Está ótimo.
Ok, vou só pedir aqui, entretanto, desliguem os vossos vídeos e que os voltem a ligar quando for o vosso momento de apresentação.
Certísimo.
Okay. Carlos, perdón, que lo he dicho en portugués. Os pido que desconectes tu cámara y la vueltas a conectar cuando llegue tu presentación, ¿vale?
Muy bien.
Vale, gracias. Okay, welcome back. I hope you are all back from your break. Ricardo, I will ask you to kindly stop sharing your screen. And we can move on to the second panel. Meanwhile, I've just seen a couple of questions arrived on the chat box. For those who asked about products, PDFs to the strategic action plan, what we'll be doing is we'll be sending after the meeting, we'll be sending to you all outcomes of the project and the links where you can find more information about everything that our colleagues shared with you in the morning. And also, Marco Fernandes, I loved your comment because you just asked us if working with the consumers would not be an important part of the game. Well, that's exactly the topic of this second panel. Well, we'll be looking at circular economy, and especially on how to engage consumers. How can we deliver great products and tell consumers that extensive production makes a difference, and it's not the same as intensive production. I won't take much more time, and I would kindly invite Isabel Carvalhais. Isabel Carvalhais is a member of the European Parliament. She's originally from Portugal. Her background is on international relations, and she has been in the past years very, very active in promoting rural development, where, of course, all these activities related to extensive livestock farming are one of the bases. So, Isabel, thank you very much for being with us today, and I would like you to give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Bárbara. Good morning to you all. And first of all, let me thank to the Associação de Defesa do Património de Mértola for this most kind invitation. And for me, it's indeed an honor to join you today at this final conference of the LifeAdapt project. I know that this is a celebration of 4 years of intense work on solutions for climate change, adaptation of extensive livestock farming, but as we celebrate the conclusion of the project, I'm sure this is but only one step in the important work that all members involved in the project will keep doing. As we all know, this is a most timely debate. The discussions around sustainability of the food systems, they are very high at present on the European agenda, as they should always be. The discussions are today less about the need to do more and better, because I would say that's almost commonsensical to say so, but mostly about how we can better direct our actions and make them more effective on the ground, while at the same time ensuring that we bring everyone together on this common goal, from producers to consumers. And we're talking about a multi-dimensional challenge with very complex environmental, social, and economic aspects. Now, extensive livestock farming is precisely in the cornerstone of the responses that can be delivered to such a challenge. Extensive livestock must be understood, and I'm sure we all agree on this, must be understood, first of all, as the product of long-standing and articulated interactions between humans and ecosystems. We're talking about highly complex systems that have been developed for hundreds of years between nature, human activity, and animals. And this has shaped the European landscapes for centuries, as I said. Extensive livestock systems, they provide many ecosystemic services. And one of the big problems of our society, as we all know, is that, usually consumers, they don't know that when they're buying products derived from extensive livestock, these are, we could say, public goods. They should be seen as such. And what is behind is actually the provision of highly important ecosystemic services. And people usually are not really aware of how important it is to value and to pay for these services. And they are very relevant, as we know, for the entire society. The extensive livestock systems provide also the capacity to manage natural resources in a sustainable way, maintaining landscapes, promoting biodiversity, reducing the hydrogeological and fire hazards. And we spoke also a bit in the previous panel, I think, the issues on water management. They also enhance the adaptive capacities to climate change, the capacities to create the dynamics of answer to climate change, including the very important function of carbon sequestration in pastures. So preserving our traditional extensive systems is therefore a fundamental component of preserving European biodiversity and of fighting against climate change. And although I'm sure you have already discussed this and you talk about this much better than me all the time, I think it's never enough. It's never too much to underline this. We still have a long way to do regarding this. Now, moving to the discussion of today's panel, this, as you know, will focus on circular economy, paving the way for extensive livestock farming. And I would say, what better system to represent circular economy in agriculture than an agricultural system that has very limited amount of external inputs, has a low pressure on the environment, and where the nutrient cycles occur often within the farm. And to discuss this, we will have the opportunity to hear from different perspectives, these 5 panelists we have today, and they will rank from economic considerations to social considerations regarding, for instance, labor organization of farms, among other topics. We live a paradox. These times are of a paradox as far as extensive livestock farming is concerned, because despite all the products and services that we say it provides, what we see is a decline over the decades of the number of grazing farms and herds. So we're talking about low intensity farming systems on marginal agricultural land, where agricultural productivity is usually constrained by biophysical factors, for instance, poor soils, steep slopes, high altitude or low rainfall, like in the south of Portugal and Spain, which makes them often less competitive when we compare them to other types of farms that produce the same products, or when you compare it to alternative employment opportunities outside farming, it's even worse. So the consequence is that farmers who deliver the greatest biodiversity benefit are typically farming under the most difficult circumstances. These from an environmental, but also from a social and an economic point of view, and are also subject to the greatest pressures to abandon their traditional way of farming. Additionally, it is a hard work activity, as we all know, and it is not always valued by society. And I keep saying this over and over. I think we still have a major problem of communication. Somehow it seemed that things were getting a bit better with the COVID-19, in the sense that suddenly people were listening how important farmers are, how important agriculture is in our life. But, you know, this is not trendy issue, so people tend to forget and tend not to value, especially if this implies, you know, paying more. And in times of dire straits, in times of economic crisis, this is a very sensitive issue, as we know. So all these factors integrated in wider trends of life constraints in more remote areas, in terms, for instance, of services and infrastructures, they all create the context for abandonment of these activities altogether. And this is precisely the context where the farms dedicated to extensive livestock production are all more essential and vital for the future of such rural areas. And this leads me to a subject that, as Barbara was saying in the beginning, is quite dear to me and is one that I've been working on recently. It's the long-term vision for the rural areas. The European report, the European Parliament's report, for which I am the rapporteur, and where I had the pleasure to work with my colleague Maria Eugenia Paulo Rodrigues. She's from another political group from the left. We have been together working on this issue. It intends to be our contribution, our political contribution towards the development of rural areas and the well-being of our rural communities. And in our report, we have identified the challenges. I'm sure everybody has identified the challenges, in particular for the most remote and the less developed rural areas. Because when we talk about rural world, there are many different rural worlds. And talking about the rural world that we're talking today in Spain, in Portugal, in the southern countries is not exactly the same in Denmark, in the Netherlands, as we all know. So we have been looking to the challenges for these areas where many of the extensive livestock production systems are located that create a very difficult context for farms and farmers. There is population decline, a lack of generational renewal, which has to do with another report that I will be doing very soon. Lack of access to high quality services of general interest, health services, education services, financial services, lower connectivity and lower access to innovation. All, to name only a few, because there are others. So, of course, if we want to promote the sustainable development of these extensive livestock farms, of course, we need to ensure that people have decent living and working conditions in their local areas. Otherwise, they will not stay, as we know. In light of this, we propose some measures for the future. For example, at this stage, I think it would already be important that during the implementation of the national programs under the current MFF, the Commission could already improve, the synergies between European funding instruments and with national instruments, facilitating more integrative approaches in rural areas. And in the long term, because unfortunately there is much that we can do at this stage now, but in the long term, it will be very important that this vision actually evolves into a true rural strategy at the EU level that will bring all different policies on board to be fully integrated into future programming periods. We also stress that the value of extensive permanent grassland-based systems should be supported and should be very much encouraged. Extensive livestock production remains a key economic activity for our rural communities, especially in the most disadvantaged areas. And this means that supporting this activity is to support local livelihoods and to ensure that we have human presence in these areas and that we fight depopulation, that we keep the most remote areas alive and productive, and that we help our rural world to preserve its cultural heritage, its territorial identity, and so forth. And this is really important because at a certain stage, when we have so few people in an area, you don't have the human capital enough to do anything or basically anything. So on this regard, I think the CAP, and I know this is a very controversial issue, but I think the CAP is important because it supports our farms, and this support has been vital, a vital source of income to offset poor business returns of extensive livestock systems. If it was not the CAP, despite all its faults, I know, but the CAP support measures have been essential to keep pastures populated and productive. So without this support, the situation would be much, much worse in most rural areas. So before finishing, let me just remind us that the CAP has a broad range of instruments that have been and can be used to better support nature-friendly and sustainable grazing, both directly and indirectly. And this is about better targeting the support and making sure that when setting the criteria for support, the specificities of these systems are also taken into due consideration. A final word, allow me, on policy opportunities. As I see it, we need to identify the gaps and opportunities in policy in order to promote a more equitable and balanced development. So policy measures supporting the role of family farming, for instance, of small-scale agriculture, of rejuvenation of the social fabric of rural areas, also policy measures enhancing the attractiveness of this sector amongst local youth, promoting short supply chains, protecting local biodiversity, they should all be seen a high priority for political action and at all levels of governance, not just European, but national, local, regional, local governance. And we should also look at the economy of extensive livestock production in a wider perspective, taking good advantage of the diversification of economic activities that are linked with the production systems by seeking new opportunities in rural leisure, in tourism, in other related activities that can contribute as much as possible to its viability. In fact, we see already that these production systems are becoming more and more multifunctional businesses and are more integrated in the wider economy. And this is the way, as I see it. So finally, at the end, what we need is a good articulation between financial support and a coherent global policy framework that altogether can take into account the relevance of extensive livestock farms for rural areas and rural communities. So thank you very much for your attention. This was basically the message that I would like to convey to you. Of course, you can underline, you can retain whatever the message. One of the messages that I find very, very important is that we still work on communication as much as possible to make sure that society understands what is at stake and understands the relevance of agricultural systems like extensive livestock farming. Because so far as we see, there are many myths, there are many misunderstandings, many confusing and confused information, and we all have to do our part. I try to do as much as possible. We all do, of course, and I think this is, an ongoing process, and everything that we'll do today will have a reflection in the very near future. So back to you, and sorry for taking so much of your time.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you very much, Isabel. You were saying, I don't know how much we will retain. I retain at least 4 main ideas, which we will be looking at in the following presentations. The aspects about policy, and we'll have Carlos of Vilo talking about policy strategies set by the European Commission just right after. You talked about economy and the need to promote healthy and resilient livelihoods for those living in rural areas. And we will hear from Lieutenant Tantos also how this is possible, and also about marketing. How can we really convey the message that we need healthy societies living in rural areas if we want to have a sustainable environment and good food? So thank you very, very much for this opening. You have done it marvelously, and I've seen many, well, I have my paper full of ideas that you've just said. So thank you so much for that, Isabel. The connection between humans and ecosystems, it's something that is the basis of my work as well as a nature communicator. How can we bring people close to nature, especially those who are so far away from nature all day of their lives? But before we delve into the nature connection part, let us invite Carlos to turn on his camera. Carlos Martin of Vilo is from the EU Commission, the DG Agri, and Carlos will shed some light on the importance of extensive livestock farming within the farm to fork strategy and also on the CAP. And whilst you can share your screen, Carlos, I will just only ask Isabel, maybe Isabel, during the next presentation, people are asking for some of those documents that support. Maybe you can put on the chat box and share it to everyone, especially the long-term vision for rural development. I think that's really an important piece of work. Thank you. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thanks so much for giving me the floor and inviting me and taking part in this very interesting discussion. And also thank you to the member of the European Parliament. I think what Isabel said in her introduction is perfectly setting the scene for what I wanted to share with you now in terms of the importance of extensive livestock. I hope you can see my presentation. I briefly introduce myself. I'm the deputy head of unit of the unit in DG Agri in the European Commission dealing with animal products. So I think it's not a surprise to you that these months are relatively hectic for us, given the social political debate about sustainability, and in particular for livestock. You can imagine it's quite often in the spotlight, no, in this debate for different considerations, environmental considerations, animal welfare, even health considerations. So we are quite used these days to use a narrative to defend the importance of livestock in general, not only extensive livestock in general. But I have to say that extensive livestock comes as a savior for us, because it's an argument where we can even be offensive. It's not only defending livestock, but even being offensive and showcasing the beauties, the positive externalities of extensive livestock for sustainability in general. So in the presentation, my idea was to go progressively getting into the title of the topic, which is livestock farming in farm to fork strategy and CAP. But first, I wanted to share with you why, in our view, generally speaking, livestock is important, and then get more into details and what some elements of the extensive production. So why it's so important, livestock animal products in our society? First of all, on the nutrition, on the diet perspective, the first element that comes to our mind is the protein, the protein intake, which currently accounts for about 50% in our diet, accounting for animal products. But it's not only about proteins; it's about a lot of unique micronutrients which are essential for our nutrition. You have a number of lists here in the slides. Bioactive components. So we fully respect the personal choices for different diets, but it's clear that there are a number of elements in animal products which are essential and cannot be replaced by other sources. From economic point of view, economic or socio-economic point of view, livestock is also key, not only in terms of for agriculture, accounting for about 40% of total agricultural output, but also for the industry, for the food industry, which is mobilizing around 400 billion euros every year. This is an amount which is being mobilized to a big extent by SMEs, small and medium sized enterprises. Socially, these livestock farms are giving an employment to more than 4 million people in the EU. And the farms, which are key for maintaining a social fabric in rural and remote areas, livestock is essential. Close to 60% of European farms are holding animals nowadays. And now we move to the key elements, the positive externalities of livestock, generally speaking, but in particularly relevant for extensive production. The miracle that animals are converting non-edible biomass, cellulose, grass, residues, etc. They are converting this stuff into tasty, nutritious food, edible to humans. So only 40% of what animals are eating could be edible for humans. 86% is grass, crop residues, is material that cannot be processed by humans. So that's what I always call it as a miracle, no? And also in terms of land use, close to 60% of the land that is being used nowadays for farming couldn't be used for crops. It's marginal land that couldn't be used for anything else. So that links to the third point in this slide. It's about the relevance for maintaining the vitality and the social fabric in rural areas. This is livestock farming in many cases is the only solution for rural communities. But we have to be conscious of the impact of livestock in climate change. And while being conscious, we can also immediately grasp the benefits of some types of livestock production as extensive livestock production. But we have to be conscious that more than 80% of the emissions from agriculture are related to livestock, and agriculture accounts for close to 10% of the total EU greenhouse emissions. The emissions from livestock, they had been decreasing for a long period, more than 20 years, but now we see a slowdown in this decrease, and even in some cases an increase in emissions. So it's obvious that something has to be done. We have to improve the environmental footprint and the environmental performance of livestock production, and there extensive livestock production plays a key role. More elements again about, let's say, acknowledging in first hand the impact of livestock, notably when it comes to more intensive production systems, more concentrated in particular geographical areas. Livestock might be contributing to water pollution, nitrate leakage, soil acidification, etc. So these are elements that we have to pay close attention and look for solutions. And again, one of these solutions, or I would say a major one, it's extensive livestock farming. So let's get to the benefits of extensive livestock farming as we showcase them again and again. And for that, I will benefit from the work of the European Economic and Social Committee. Probably you are all aware of this report that was released last year, and it has very key elements that have to be showcased when defending livestock, in particular extensive livestock. Here you have the whole list of the very diverse elements where a livestock comes as a solution for seeking for sustainable farming. It's acknowledged to be a sustainable production method from the three main angles of sustainability: environmental, economic, and social. It can not only adapt to climate change, but also to contribute to mitigate the climate change. It was mentioned by the member of the European Parliament in her introduction. It's key in harnessing local natural resources, valorizing activities in mountain areas, in pasture, marginal land, what I said before in a couple of slides before, the possibility to valorize areas, land, resources that otherwise would be lost. This is one of the characteristics of extensive farming is the low use of external inputs. This is an extremely relevant topic these days, as you can imagine, in the geopolitical situation we are living these days, notably with the war in Ukraine. You know that the Commission has just published a communication on fertilizers. So advocating for practices that minimize to the possible extent the use of external inputs is certainly a key these days. In terms of greenhouse emissions, we know that extensive livestock farming can be a way to reduce this gas emission, not only to reduce the emissions, but also to capture carbon and contribute to circular economy. The maintenance of rustic, indigenous, resilient breeds is also a characteristic of extensive farming. I put in red another element, which is the positive externalities of grasslands, generally speaking. I put it in red because obviously I will be making many references to grasslands in the rest of my presentation. But it's not only about maintaining the landscapes, it's not only about gardening, let's say, our landscape, but also protecting the biodiversity, preventing forest fires, also by all these activities, limiting the impact of floods and preventing soil erosion. And I already said it before, the importance of maintaining, let's say, population in rural areas. So again, now to the point, what about the Farm to Fork strategy and the CAP? So I put in this slide, I opened the Farm to Fork strategy and I looked for the word livestock, and these are the 5 matches I got in the text. So I will reduce basically to the last sentence, which is related notably to the promotion program, but what is relevant is the concept, is that the Farm to Fork strategy generally speaking, having sustainability as a main goal. The idea when it comes to livestock is to find the ways to support the most sustainable and carbon efficient methods of livestock production. So this is key, and this is obviously describing what extensive livestock production is about. So without having explicit reference to extensive livestock, one can clearly see the, let's say, the importance in this context. If we go to the CAP and we look the CAP strategic plan formulation, in one of the first recitals of the text, you have this important statement about the need for the Union to improve the response to the number of societal demands on food and health, safe, nutritious food produced in a sustainable way. And the regulation indicates a number of let's say hints, or a number of producing practices such as organic, IPM, agroecology, agroforestry, so activities where extensive farming perfectly fits. So, going more details about the CAP, what can be done within the CAP to support this type of practices? There are many tools, and I want to also to be clear, it's not only about extensive livestock. We also advocate that intensive farming can be also sustainable or can be guided through a sustainable path. So there's no single solution, but there are beauties and trade-offs here and there. But definitely, there are a number of elements in the policy that are being implemented these days in the CAP that are clearly targeted, and our extensive production can really benefit from these elements. Starting with the conditionality standards in terms of maintaining pastures, water, nitrates, animal welfare. These are elements which are in the, let's say, in the core, in the substance of extensive farming. We have, I wonder if you have discussed it so far this morning, but certainly I will have a couple of slides on this, the new instrument, which is the eco schemes. At least 25% of the budget for direct payments will be devoted to this new approach, new schemes, payments to support farmers who are adopting, who are engaging in a number of commitments for sustainable production. I will develop it a bit further. We have the traditional rural development interventions, these agro-environmental commitments, for instance, the protection of rustic breeds. This is an element which is, let's say, vastly supported under rural development measures, in addition to animal welfare, for instance. And last but not least, all this can be also channeled in a collective way via producer organizations. So this is not specifically about extensive livestock, but it's something where also extensive livestock producer can benefit from. So we go to the eco schemes. This is just a copy paste from the regulation. I will not read out completely to save your time. But the thing is that if you list this list of different practices considered to be beneficial for climate, environment, etc., almost everywhere you see the place of extensive livestock production in terms of reducing greenhouse emissions, carbon sequestration. It's almost a mirror of what I presented a couple of slides before when highlighting the benefits of livestock, extensive livestock production. It's almost a match one-to-one in terms of water quality, the soil degradation, biodiversity, etc. So clearly there's a place for extensive livestock production in the eco schemes. I refer again to this report from the Economic and Social Committee on the benefits of livestock farming, because it was interesting. They conducted a survey, and one of the questions in this survey was about what measures would be effective in improving the role of the livestock sector for climate change mitigation. And you see that the use of permanent grassland is perceived as very effective for 65% of the respondents, and 25% also moderately effective. So generally speaking, one could say permanent grassland, which is a key element of extensive livestock production is considered to be an effective way to contribute to climate change mitigation. And not surprisingly, I go back to the eco schemes. If you look at the eco schemes, those which have been approved, those which are about to be approved in the coming weeks, I did a quick check, and around 20 member states have included in their CAP strategic plan eco schemes which are somehow pivoting around grasslands, management of permanent grasslands, temporary grasslands, but grasslands, it's everywhere. I put it in the top of this list just that you have in the screen. But there are also mentions of different eco schemes looking at pastoral farming, grazing, pasture management, extensive livestock, no tillage practices, also even animal welfare, which is a bit more generic, but to a big extent could fit in livestock, in extensive livestock. So as you can see, this is a paramount, I would say, instrument in the new CAP, and it's been vastly used for practices which are fitting, I would say, 100% into extensive livestock production. I did a very quick calculation. Don't quote the figure, but just for reference, I did a quick calculation on what has been foreseen in all these 20 member states, and it would be around 5 billion euros, which would be mobilized to support all these practices via eco schemes. Again, please don't quote that figure because it's a very rough estimate I just did a few minutes ago, but just to have a reference of the importance of this in economic terms. Last but not least, to mention another example of instruments that can be relevant for extensive production is the coupled income support. I mean, it's an instrument which has been reformed or reviewed with the latest reform, but there was already in place the voluntary coupled support. Now it was going to be the coupled income support. Here you have the two pies with the distribution of the use of the budget in the current period and in the future period in 2023-27. And as you can see, livestock sectors are the top ones receiving this coupled income support, which I think it was mentioned before by another colleague from the Commission. In the process of approving and reviewing the CAP plans, the element of extensification of this livestock production was being looked at very carefully. So it's not the coupled income support is not given to any type of livestock production, but notably looking at extensive methods. And then I finish my presentation with this slide, which of course I will not go through all the points. Just as a reference, it's something that we use in our debates to highlight the number of different practices that can be tackled by the livestock sector to improve the sustainability performance. And as you can see, everywhere you can see different practices, different recommendations that are either inherent to extensive production. You have extensive livestock management or organic fertilizer. These are elements which are inherent to extensive livestock production, but some other, let's say, initiatives that can be also be considered by intensive or extensive livestock producers, anaerobic digestions or different strategies on protein feed, etc. A number of elements, a number of initiatives that can be put in place to improve the sustainability performance, and to a big extent, if not to a full extent, can be also supported with CAP instruments. And with this, I stop my presentation. I am happy to take questions or debate further on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. This was really needed. I'm sorry that you weren't able to join us in the beginning, because one of the things that we said is actually the problem of defining extensive or differentiating extensive livestock from intensive livestock farming. And we will have the opportunity to discuss this in the debate, but that's also something that hinders somehow the perception of the benefits that extensive has in comparison to intensive. Thank you very much to share with us, for sharing with us all the tools. And if you agree, we will be publishing your presentation. Would that be okay, Carlos?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Okay.
So later on, you will all have access. It will be sent to your inbox, the presentation of Carlos. Meanwhile, do use your chat box, the Q&A, and write down your questions for the debate. And without taking any longer, because we are running a bit ahead of behind of schedule, I will ask Pedro to turn on his camera. Pedro has a long experience in biodiversity, landscape management, but especially pastoralism and silvopastoral systems. And this is exactly what he's going to talk about. Carlos mentioned to us some of the options of management using with livestock, extensive livestock farming. And now we will jump deep into some of these ways of producing. Pedro, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much for leading this wonderful workshop. And thanks to the whole team of the LifeAdapt project for their great results. Well, I'm going to set the focus on differentiation because I think that we have reached the point where we shouldn't be talking of extensive livestock as the same sector than other animal productions. Whilst the European Union is seeing a fall in our agrobiodiversity, that is actually matching the decline of extensive farms. Each day, more extensive farms are closing their doors because they are not able to cope with the actual market, legal and regulation situation. That also coincides with the increasing awareness from the European Union society that we actually need pastoralism, we need extensive livestock farming for many ecosystem services, many production, to provide food, to provide better landscapes, to manage land, and to be able to adapt to the current situation of global change. However, the current scenario is a challenging one. We know all the benefits. We have already seen them in this workshop. We also know that extensive livestock is especially vulnerable to many of the negative drivers that are actually driving our land. I'm talking about climatic change, land degradation, polarization of land, fragmentation, etc. So a supportive policy framework is needed at different levels. Sorry, I wasn't aware that I wasn't sharing my presentation. Well, then a supportive policy framework is needed at different levels for extensive livestock to fulfilling these benefits that we have already talked about, starting by the European institutions. However, actual European rules, the CAP, the Farm to Fork strategy, and the 2030 biodiversity strategy fall in the same flaw. They all recognize pastoralism and extensive livestock farming. They all recognize its role and its benefits, but there is very little positive action developed. Pastoralist voices are advocating for deep changes toward equitable policies, strengthening the role of extensive livestock in Europe. Besides, the 2026 International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, brings a huge opportunity for the European Union to step up and develop a supportive, strategic, and legal framework for pastoralism and extensive livestock farming, to follow the path already initiated by other international institutions. We have already started some steps toward a better support for pastoralism. However, we need to address that we are talking about a differentiated activity. As we just have seen in the previous presentations, production systems matter in terms of rural development, in terms of landscape and land management, in terms of adaptation to climate change. But the lack of differentiation is actually harming pastoralism and also other intensive production systems, because it's crisscrossing their responsibilities and their impact in the environment and in the whole society. European researchers have already established the benefits of extensive livestock. Transhumance in Europe is actually being recognized as World Heritage by the UNESCO. It has been in several countries, and right now is in the process of being recognized in some other countries. There is a European support group working in the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism. And there are a huge movement supporting pastoralism in Europe. However, we are still waiting for these advances in the legal and political framework to support pastoralism. These advances should be taken in 3 different levels: a policy level, a social framework level, and an economic and market framework level. Well, the policy framework should be summarized in a legal definition and in a strategic plan, especially intended for extensive livestock farming. The social framework points to promote the representation and participation of pastoralists, facilitating association and capacity building of pastoralist grassroots. Also, increasing the role of pastoralists in land governance, because if they are not allowed to govern or to participate in land governance, many of the intended benefits won't be produced, because we don't know actually how to do it if it wasn't because we have pastoralists. And finally, the economic and market framework is very important, that extensive livestock products could be differentiated and could be sold under a guarantee label that builds trust between consumers and pastoralists. And besides everything, we need to celebrate pastoralism, because it's surviving, it's fighting for his place in our society. And as I said before, I think we are already making positive steps. I want to share with you a small example of how we are dealing with all these issues in Spain through the Spanish platform on extensive livestock farming and pastoralism. We have been working for several years now in the same lines that I shared with you in the previous slide. In the policy framework, making lobbying for pastoralism, trying to develop a supportive legal framework, in the social framework, and in the economic and market framework. Also, setting the focus on science and communication of the results, and big effort to join our work with the work of other supporters, other pastoralist networks in Europe and in other countries. Our main actions go to lobby on policies, supporting shepherds and multi-stakeholder association, bringing together practitioners, academics, public servants, and supporters, publishing research and dissemination papers on pastoralism, making a huge effort in training, in dissemination, in facilitate participatory process regarding pastoralism. And right now we are working in the economic and differentiation level to develop a participatory process over differentiation. We are trying to develop a participatory level supporting all pastoralist products in Spain. We are in the middle of the struggle to get this process worked out. We have set in motion a steering committee, participated, but a lot of different organizations linked to the Spanish platform, including producers, retailers, supporters, conservationists, academics, and other agents. We have developed an user's manual already agreed by all parts. We have initiated the legal process for purchasing a trademark to use it legally to differentiate extensive livestock. The drafts of the trademark is in the left side of the slide, and we have already held meetings with the ministries of the 3 departments involved in this differentiation process: agriculture, ecological transition, and consume. We have got a lot of good words, also a lot of problems, but we think we are in the right way to develop this trademark, and we keep negotiating with the government how we can set this map, how we can get permission to use the words extensive livestock in our trademark, and coordinate the label with the evolving policy framework emanating from the new CAP and the different strategies that we already discussed. Well, that's quite everything from my side. I'm open to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Indeed, the work that you've been doing in Spain in promoting and moving forward with this labeling scheme is very important and inspiring as well. I have some questions prepared for this, but let's leave them for the debate. And for now, I would like to call my colleague Maria Bastidas from Adpm. She will be talking about how to mobilize the business sector. So we have talked about some specific way of producing, and now we will be looking at economic aspects of extensive livestock farming. Maria, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everyone. Of course, in the first panel and during this morning, this interesting morning, we have talked about why extensive livestock is important and how we can improve them, and which are the main point or the strong point where we have to communicate better. But in fact, there is an important issue here now. Is about the marketing and the consumer. So marketing and consumer are one of the, or maybe one of the main way to in fact promote extensive livestock. One second, please.
Tens 2 ecrãs, tens de usar um.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
We don't see it in the presenter's mode. I don't know why.
No.
Just put it on presenter's mode. I think it will work now. If you disconnected your second screen.
Yeah.
No. Not really willing to work.
No. So we would interrupt.
Okay, try it again. Meanwhile, another call to ask you for questions. I've seen some questions are coming in already. Maria, can you Yes, can you share your screen?
1 second, please. If you can give me one second, please. Yeah.
Well, it's still not on present. Yeah, more or less on presenters mode.
Can you give me a hand here?
On the top, definições do monitor, you can go there. On the top of your screen, the second, right on the right side from this one. No, definições do monitor.
The second from the right side, yeah. Down or on the top.
No, it was, estava mesmo aí ao lado, Maria, onde dizia ferramentas, definições do monitor, e tens que carregar em definições do monitor. Senão eu posso apresentar diretamente no computador.
Então, se tu puderes apresentar é melhor, se tu tiveres a apresentação aí, não é?
Ok, então estou a apresentar. Ok, Maria, podes começar e eu vou passando. Ok, I think you can all see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, Maria, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So today let's talk about a little bit about this second main aspect, that is market, and how marketing and consumer vision could in fact improve also and valorize the system of extensive livestock system and its product. So my presentation will focus in 3 points. One about what was done on LiveAdapt project about these issues. That was a first step, we can say, and then how is a short situation about how is in Portugal the situation of product, mainly of meat product of extensive livestock system. You can go. So the first things that I would share with you, that is in fact there are innovative tools for the design of new business model applying different sector, agriculture sector in Europe, but these tools normally have been used in extensive livestock to detect new opportunity or manage the business to increase the profitability. That is important because, in fact, the extensive livestock system is have a lack of profitability, mainly on the south of Iberian Peninsula, and it's very important to find new way and give new opportunity and a strategy to develop. To promote the modernization of the system and adapt to the current challenge, the project developed this guide, a guide with a viable business model for extensive livestock, considering the new climate reality and the market challenge. There is also provide some examples of concrete and real livestock, extensive livestock system. You can go. In this document, you can find 3 kind of model. So the first one, the venture model, allow the creation of producer association through which farmers can have great negotiation power again, large distribution chains, that in fact is a big problem, and can offer a wide range of products that can meet the needs of local consumer. In the e-commerce integration model is mainly focusing on a platform where producer, consumer, and delivery system are brought together, and an environment where the whole chains can be shortened by only 3 links. That is the main idea. And finally, the short chain model, of course, try to reduce the distance that food travel from the producer to the consumer, and is mainly based in the use of social networks. You can pass, please. With this reality, the LiveAdapt project set up a marketing campaign for extensive livestock products, have different names, have a little difference between the slogan in Portugal and in Spain. But as Vicente showed in the beginning of the webinar, the idea is try to focus in these 9 very, very strong points why we should prefer and consume a product that came from extensive livestock system. Okay, you can pass, please. The whole campaign aimed to enhance the value and differentiation of product of extensive livestock farming in the market, since offer quality of product, the animal welfare, the biodiversity, and so on. The most interesting tool that I like to highlight today is this group of videos. So first we have a group of 5 videos where Candela is a girl that you can show in the picture, explain the benefit of extensive livestock farming in a very simple way, in a very friendly way. Some videos focusing socioeconomic aspects, other in sustainability, nature, patrimony, and commercialization. Then in Portugal was developed another group of video, was 2 in specific, that called "There is a Conversation Between the Pasture and the Plate," and joint chef with extensive livestock farmer to share the benefit and concern about the sector and about the marketing. And the idea was to join these 2 works across the different local dishes that was prepared during the video. You can pass, please. As was shown in the last presentation, there is a consumer concern about the quality of the product and the region of the product, and there is more and more stimulate the people to consume locally. Okay, and in Portugal, for example, we have two pictures from the newspaper that show, for one hand, how the European fund have been used to rebuild and recover traditional market. But in fact, this have a strong impact in vegetables and fruit, but not so much impact on meat market. Okay. Anyway, in fact, there is interest from the consumer. They are search quality. They want different production, and the market is request. But we have some problem, and that is what I want to show you in the next slide. For the product which the consumer we need to transform, we are speaking mainly about meat. Okay. There are important obstacles on that. On the left side, you can, or here in the map of Portugal, you have different regions, and in regions you have the number of approved or lighthouses for one hand, and then you have the number of animals in this region. As you can see, you have a big an important concentration of different kind of slaughterhouses on the north, okay, and on the center. But in the region where you have a biggest amount of animal, you have only 3 slaughterhouses. And it's very important to say that even these 3 are not available for small farmers, okay, and family farms. So that is a very, very important constraint if we want to, in fact, put in the place the farm to fork strategy, and if we, in fact, we want to stimulate this extensive livestock system in Europe and all the positive effect that we saw before, that with the law. Okay. So as conclusion, is the marketing campaign in LifeAdapt project was a first step for a very important work that is urgent to start, not only at regional, local, and national level, but also at a European level. Is really important to communicate better, as was say also during the morning, the benefits of this system. It's very important to also in this communication give information, in fact, to make a concrete differentiation of different system products. There is space of different system on the production of Europe, but in fact, extensive livestock give not only food but also different important outputs for the whole society. In Portugal, there are important, with this project allow us to build a very important network for us. It's a network that join researchers, companies, and different entities that represent the sector to start to work in a specificity of this extensive livestock farming, on promote, on incentivate also a better understand, a better knowledge, communication, and so on. And this example that was also shown today by Pedro about this opportunity for a better communication and a better interlink between the different CAP opportunity is also important to put on the field also in Portugal. So that is for my hand, and I see you on the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Well, Maria explained a bit some of another outcomes of the project. So if in the first panel we looked at the outcomes more on the biodiversity and climate adaptation techniques and tools, innovative tools, on the social and economic aspects, we have done a research on the models. This report is available. It will also be sent to your email. But also there was a big work or a big effort on creating tools for awareness raising. Well, the tools and the videos that Maria presented to you, they are available in Portuguese and in Spanish, and there are some also in French, which you can use it to convey your own messages. So don't think it's something that we own, the LiveAdapt project, but actually something that we did for the greater good and to be shared across multiple organizations. Meanwhile, I know we are running a bit late, but do keep with us. We will just look at two more experiences. We looked at the problems that we found in Portugal in establishing these short supply chains, something that both Isabel and Carlos mentioned in their presentation, the need to go regional and to go local, and the need to adapt. There is no solution that fits all. And indeed, what we see in Portugal is like this lack of slaughterhouses that hinders and prejudices all the intentions of short supply chains. If the carcass needs to travel 500 kilometers back and forth to be processed and then come back to the consumer, then we lost the race already. So this is something very important from Portugal. But let's now jump to Spain. Luis from Enogestiona. She will also tell us about the short supply chains in Spain. The floor is yours, Luis.
Thank you, Barbara. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, great, fantastic, yes.
Thanks a lot, Barbara, for the great job you are doing, and thanks to all for the great results you are presenting, and thanks to you all for your attention. I hope you are not too tired. So I will talk a bit more about short food supply chains in relation with extensive livestock farming, specifically in Spain. So the background, the main sources, let's say, of information I'm using are first the roadmap for a long-term impact we provided in the framework of the project Smart Chain, Horizon 2020 project that ended last year. Also, all the interviews and different contacts we had along the project with the pilot farms in Spain and Portugal. There are 10 in the project, in the framework of this project. And finally, a specific report from some colleagues of the Fundación Entre Tantos about the short food supply chain in Spain. So what's the issue exactly when we are talking about short food supply chain in this context? Actually, it's important to say that the farmers that we met are quite desperate. In general, their farm are not economically viable, or it's very difficult to make them viable. And the problem is exacerbated by climate change, obviously, because it's adding pressure on the production costs, and it's adding also economic uncertainty. And in parallel, selling prices of their products, meat, wool, in case of sheep, are also decreasing. So it's a very difficult context. It's true also that we observe some important unfair trading practices in the sector, and a very limited bargaining power in the conventional channels for producers, and especially for small producers. So in general, it's difficult to avoid conventional channels to sell extensive products. So the main problem, I would say, would be the lack of alternatives. I won't enter here, obviously, in the debate about the definition of short food supply chains, but what's important here, in my understanding, is to provide alternatives for producers to sell their products. So if in general, I'm trying to provide a few data about short food supply chains and extensive livestock, but it's true that there is a lack of data, specific data on short food supply chain, and combined with the lack of data about extensive livestock, it makes it quite difficult. But luckily, as I mentioned at the beginning, some colleagues of the Fundación Entre Tantos in another context made a remarkable job trying to use the existing data to draw conclusions about short food supply chain in Spain. And from there, we can say that first, only a very small percentage of the Spanish farms actually sells more than half production directly. And this is with important disparities between regions. For example, in Galicia, Asturias and Basque Country, there is a very high level of direct sales, while in Madrid, Murcia, and La Rioja is very marginal. We can say also that bovine and livestock farms in general represent the largest percentage of the exploitations that already sell in short food supply chains. They represent more than 60%. But this, of course, doesn't disaggregate between extensive and intensive, because the differentiation, it's a problem that we already mentioned, is not official, and it's difficult to set the limit between both. But yeah, it's true that farms that sell in short food supply chains are usually smaller, so that we can imagine, we can make the hypothesis that the farms that sell in short food supply chain are actually extensive ones, but it's only a hypothesis. Many farms that are selling through short food supply chains also sell processed products. So they process on the farm, or they process themselves, and they sell their product. So they add value to the primary product. It's especially the case for the products from ovine and caprine production. The farmers we have been talking with are generally quite interested in alternative channels, like short food supply chains and direct sales and so on. And actually, some of them are already doing it and very successfully. But they mention also a lot of obstacles to the development of short food supply chains. They are of different kinds. First, the logistic and infrastructure. As Maria already mentioned, the slaughterhouses are a key point of the chain. We will talk about this a bit later. But the transport and storage may also be an issue, and processing also. Regulatory barriers are a recurrent topic. So we are talking about the food health and safety standards and the control procedures, the so-called hygiene package, which regulates all these issues. Regarding the lack of capacity and resources of producers, there is also a lot to do. And as we already mentioned also, the consumer awareness and capacity to make informed choice, and the lack of affordability and accessibility, which is related, I think, to a more general problem, that is that externalities are generally not included in the final price of food products, so that a product that actually has a very positive environmental and social externalities is actually more expensive than another one. So regarding the logistics and infrastructures, we have already very good examples and pilot projects of local mobile and on-farm abattoirs. So here you have a picture of one of the first mobile slaughterhouses, which is actually a public project in Galicia. So this is a truck basically that can go on the farm and kill the animals directly on the farm. So it's very interesting because there is no transport. It increases a lot the animal welfare also. There is also an example in Catalonia of on-farm slaughterhouses. This was a presentation I attended last year, and it was really interesting because they were presenting also the economic data of the investment they made. And actually, with an amortization on 10 years, they were reducing the cost of per killed animal of at half. So the price killing the animal on the farm with this system was half the price killing it in the closest abattoir. But beyond that, we can also speak about shared processing infrastructure, obradores compartidos, in Spain. So yeah, there is very interesting initiatives already that needs to be supported. In regulatory and financially, of course. In terms of regulatory barriers, there are three main levers of action, I would say. First, the flexibility. So the European legislators already allow some kind of flexibility in the regulation, exclusion, adaptation, and derogation to some rules. There is already a guidance at European level about that, but it's difficult. There is a very big difference between European countries in the implementation of this flexibility. Concretely in Spain, there were a new law, Real Decreto, a couple of years ago, and it opens actually new perspective on flexibility. For, among others, small and mobile slaughterhouses, raw milk products, and direct supply activities. There is also a need for support from producers to fulfill health and safety requirements, financial support, and also advice, because it's very complex and very case by case sometimes. So yeah, it's really needed by producers. And also another interesting lever of action is the public procurement. It would be interesting to ease the access to small and extensive producers to public procurement contracts through sustainability criteria. Regarding the capacities and resources of farmers, it's another important. We have some very nice examples of farm already, as I said, already selling directly and processing then their own products, and some develop their own brand, and yeah, they make already a very nice job. But generally speaking, farmers lack time and sometimes also skills and knowledge to develop such activities. So it's very important to improve short food supply chain specific advice to producers in all their dimensions about regulations, marketing strategies, business models, and so on. In this regard, we are working now in 2 new projects, Horizon Europe project, specifically on short food supply chain advice, which are EU for Advice and History in Project Coronet. So keep in touch with those projects. It's also important to provide selling infrastructures and marketing services, both physical and digital, for short food supply chains. So it would potentially enhance the logistics and the transport efficiency, and thus, by the way, it also increase the environmental sustainability. Encourage the promotion of local short food supply chain by local authorities. It's also important. The support of collectivization and all forms of sharing and networking activities that bring together small producers, what Maria was already saying with the joint venture, for example, so or horizontal networks, and also the vertical integration, small producers and other stakeholders of the value chain working together and adding value to the products. And also open short food supply chain specific lines of subsidies for small extensive livestock producers. Regarding the consumer awareness and affordability and accessibility, yeah, it's important to product extensive livestock products, foster the transparency and communication about environmental sustainability and socioeconomic fairness of food products. It was already addressed in some previous presentation, but a good solution could be to install a simple and effective certification mechanisms that doesn't add burden for the producers that already don't have time. So yeah, this is it. Just a few ideas about short food supply chains and possible solutions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Louise. And thank you very much for bringing 2 important concepts on discussion. One of them is externalities. And this is something that must be talking about, because if the prices do not comprise the externalities, the footprint impact, then they will arrive on the shelf when the consumers in the supermarket have to choose, and they will obviously choose the cheapest one, which many times came from Latin America, for example, whilst you have high quality meat producing real ecosystem benefits just on the background of your building, or just a couple of miles away from you, and still you will opt to buy the cheapest one. So there are some things that we will be discussing right after our last presentation. After looking at short supply chains in Portugal, Spain, we will now hear from Jocelyne Fagon from IDEL. What is the status in France? Jocelyne.
Hello, everyone. So thanks a lot for your invitation, and thanks, Barbara. I will also share my screen in a few minutes. I guess that I can do it. Up. And I guess that you can see it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is it perfect for you?
Non, c'est pas parfait.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's good. Thank you.
So here's my the idea of this presentation is we work with my colleague Christine Guenamard and myself from the French Livestock Institute. We discuss about the opportunity also to discuss about the labor when you discuss about short food supply chains. We guess that it's a good opportunity to develop such activities, but don't forget to look after the labor. And we can see that there are several issues connected to these topics, and we have to consider them. And that's why we wanted to have also some short inputs on these topics. The idea when we ask colleagues, farmers, advisors, what does it mean, in fact, when you say labor on farms? What does it mean for you? A lot of them have plenty of ideas and words that we can collect and connect them to other bigger ideas about labor, and that's why it's there is a lot of things, and that's why it's important to classify them, to organize all these ideas to be more careful when we will work on it. So here is a framework that we can usually discuss, and when we discuss about such topics. So the first one is there is a lot of things connected to the job's meaning when someone discuss about his activities. So sure that you have chosen your job, you have done some choice, and you have some motivations to work on it. You are waiting a bit of social recognition also of your activities, and also you are sometimes proud, sometimes you are really aware of your image also. So it's important to follow such things. Sure, when you discuss about labor, it's also how to organize your activities, the workforce working on your activities, the relationship among you, all the workload also that you have to work and to deal with. A lot of practices to work and to organize, and use your equipment and buildings to make it more easier. Then you can also have some topics connected to your quality of life. You have some goals on it to get more free time on weekends, holidays, or to do other activities. You wanted also to make some balance between your professional and private activities and life. Sure that you take care of your living conditions also. And the last point, but not least, about your income also, which can be important also to ensure your quality of life. Then you can get also some other topics connected to your health and welfare, about physical workload also, or mental workload. So that's important also to get them in your mind. And the three last one, quite connected also. When you discuss about labor, you are not working alone on your activities, on your village, on your territory. So that's why it's important also to discuss about your connection with advisors, farmers, and other social actors connected to your jobs and your activities. Then you can discuss about which services are provided by your activities, but also which services are quite connected to your farms. So that's a good point to discuss with society globally, and you can make a lot of links. And that's why also when you develop your short food supply chains, all these jobs meanings and also links with general society is reinforced. In fact, there is a lot of things to discuss together. And the last one, it's about your territory characteristics. Sure that you have some important things to consider, if you have some good roads or not, if you have some hospitals close to your farms or your business activities, if you have a large city or not. That's also important to organize your activity and your daily activities. And then all this you can easily understand that it can change also. Something which was true yesterday won't be true maybe tomorrow if you have changed something in your mind or in your workforce composition. Or so that's why if we focus more clearly on working in short food supply chains, we can see that when we discuss with farmers, shows that now they are more or less breeder, on-farm processor, and seller. So more or less 3 jobs in one. And that's important also to get this in mind, to be sure that when you discuss jobs organization, you have this overview in your mind. So sure that you have to produce on the left one, to produce milk, meat, wool, or other provided services, as we discussed this morning. And you have to organize and carry out all these activities connected to all your resources in your system, in fact. And if you have some partners to work with or some employees, you have also something to deal with management. Some of them can be specialists, some other can be more or less polyvalent, so you have to deal also with them. Then when you have your raw material, you want to transform it, if it's a milk, for instance, so you can define your product range. It's also important to discuss about this. So some of them just work on a simple range, and some other want a wide diversity of product. And that's why it's important to be sure that you have enough skills to develop all this and to control all of them, in fact, but also to ensure the quality of your project, in fact. So that's a quite important part of your job. And the last one about how to sell all the product directly. You have maybe 2 main things to think. One about logistic, how to organize your supply and distribution circuit, or when you have some market, how you can go on market. So it's always a balance between price, time, distance to work on it. And in the other side, you have also to take care of your clients and consumers. So just to be sure that your relationships is nice. So sure that you have to find clients and to keep them. So you spend sometimes also to keep them, and to have enough products also to sell them. So all this it's important, connected also to your price, and a lot of your activities also that you spend with unsold goods. So you have to manage this unsold goods also. And that's why when you say that looking after the labor organization on a farm, working in short food supply chains, all these activities has to be looked after. And as we have seen with the presentation of Louise just before my presentation, we have seen that there is a lot of sanitary and regulatory controls, and in all farms, but especially on this short food supply chains farms, and also a lot of time to spend about administrative workload and accounting also. And when we discuss, because it was also one of the first inputs of this morning, some impact of the climate. So sure that you can consider that is the biggest one connected to the production activities on your fodder area, for instance, but you can find also some possible impact of the climate about the quality of the products and the quality the way to transform your products, and also about your relationship with your consumers. Maybe during the season they don't have the same expectation about your products, and that's important also. If you have some diversity of your production, it can be quite difficult also to deal with your daily relationship with your consumers. And then we just wanted with Christine show you 2 examples of 2 production to be more real, in fact, in your mind about what does it mean when you discuss about labor. So, for instance, here it's a week with the dairy goat farmers who are also on-farm cheese producers. So on this farm, it was 2 labor units, so they were full-time equivalent and polyvalent, with 100 dairy goats. They produce 70,000 liters of milk, and they fully transform it in cheese. And about marketing and selling, so they organize 2 markets per week and 1 selling circuit close to their farm, and also they have a farm shop on their farms also. So here is the week. So I didn't translate the name of the day, but I think that you can easily read it. So from Monday until Sunday, and this is the daily routine work done by the two partners, in fact. So as you can see, the livestock breeding activities are almost in green, are almost the same during all the year or all the week, but the cheese production also is more or less all the same every day, but you can see that there is some change. If one of them go on the market, the other one has to produce the cheese by himself. So that's why there is some color switch from deep blue and clear blue on Wednesday and Friday and Saturday. And the other part is on-farm selling is more or less every day the same, maybe not on Sunday, but a bit more on Saturday. And the orange one about market and circuit, from how to prepare all your goods and how you put it on the market and how you bring them back, you can see that there are some differences between one day to another one. So if you just follow the activities with chronometer, you can see that, okay, they spend more or less 4,000 hours for annual routine work for two partners, full-time equivalent. And you have to add all the seasonal activities to work on the fodder area, for instance. And but if you split this time, you can see that more or less 40% is dedicated to the livestock breeding activities, and the 60% is equally shared between on-farm transformation and commercialization. So that's why this amount of hours is quite important and has to be considered when you want to develop your activities on the short supply chains. And marketing and selling, as you can see, the orange square just on the figure on the top of this screen, you can see that this is the activities which drive, in fact, the distribution of work and task, and it induces also a lot of various wins over the week. And it's important also to get this in mind to discuss about them, how to deal about your activities. And the last one, but it was just another way to see it. When you produce meat, in fact, it's much more sure that you have to focus on your daily activity and seasonal activity on livestock, crops, and meadows, how to work on it, and also some administrative tasks to run your business. But you can see that you have to spend a lot of time to plan your activities, how to sell, to find them, to get some contacts, regular contact with them, to also organize service providers when you have to transport your animals, lively or deadly animals, and then how to choose your animals. And then after, when the animals have been slaughtered, you have a lot of activities also to work on your management of your service suppliers or employees, if they work with you, to manufacture all the activities and to package all the meat, then to deliver, to sell them, and eventually to stock all this meat also at your farm before to go on market. And that was also another key message when you work on such a short supply chain activities. It's important to anticipate your activity to be able also to deal with the unexpected, as all the climate hazard that we can expect or unexpect every year now. So that was our short overview of some issues connected to labor and when you discuss about short supply chains. So thanks for your attention, and I'm sure if we have some also questions, we could discuss with my colleagues, Christine. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn, and thank you very much to Idel. I really like this idea that you gave. It's 3 jobs in one person, right?
Yeah.
We demand too much from our farmers. And at the same time, they are not experts in doing everything. And that's why organizations are so important to support them, at least in this marketplacing. Well, we know we are a bit late, and we are probably hungry as well, especially because we've been talking about food in the last couple of hours. But I would like you to invite all the presenters that participated in this panel to turn on their cameras, and we'll go for a very short round of questions, and then we will wrap up and let you go to your lunch. So there is something that struck me, Carlos, since the beginning in your presentation. You mentioned that, and the data is available, that around 10% of greenhouse gas emissions come from farming. From that, almost 80% is related to livestock farming. You also said that over the last couple of years, that number is being decreased. Now, one question is it being decreased, the greenhouse gas emissions, because we have less production, or because we are importing more meat? And are the meat imported being taking account in these greenhouse gas emissions?
Thank you, Barbara. No, certainly the imports are not taken into account. What I referred to was the emissions of our domestic production. And the core of this decrease is basically linked to the decrease in the herd, in the number of heads. Certainly, the practices have also improved over time, but the main driver for this decrease is the number of animals, which in turn is also the explanation for the slowdown in this decrease in the last decade, precisely because the number of animals has stagnated, in some cases increased.
Okay, because one of the aims of the Farm to Fork strategy, actually what is written, one of the points is to minimize placing of products in the European Union supermarkets that are associated with deforestation, for example. Mm-hmm. But we do know this is very hard to translate into real politics. What are the solutions to make a proper differentiation in the market so that consumers have the option to choose?
Oh, you are mixing different elements with regards to the first part on the placing on the market of products from or avoiding the placing on the market of products from deforested areas. This is difficult, but indeed the Commission has made a proposal which is quite far-reaching to prevent the marketing, notably imports, but it would eventually also apply to domestic products, but to prevent the marketing of products which come from deforested areas. So this is quite far-reaching because it involves, let's say, relations with third countries. So it's something that has to get the blessing of the WTO, definitely, but voila, the Commission has pushed on this. The initiative is being now scrutinized by the Parliament and the Council, because it would be a regulation of the Parliament and the Council. But so it shows that something can be done in relation, and that was also mentioned as an example. You might know that the Commission produced a report to the Council and the Parliament on the possibility of introducing this type of sustainability elements in products we imported from third countries. Not everything can be done. It has to be justified in terms of for the sake of free trade, so to say. But this example of deforestation is like a paradigm of something that where there's a will and there's a solid argument, it can be done. Then you can you mentioned about consumers. Certainly, the information to consumers is essential. Whether the consumers make use of this information is something different. But on that respect, again, the Commission is working on, I would say, what would be the flagship of all the initiatives in the Farm to Fork, which is a framework for sustainable food systems. And one of the elements that is being considered and the Commission is working on is not my DG, it's DG Sante on the lead, but still we are associated, is the creation of a label, a sustainability label, to identify according to many different parameters. It's still to be seen how this label would be built and calculated based on obviously on factual data. what products have a better or worse sustainability performance. So the Commission is working on that, and the idea is to have a proposal by the end of next year.
Very good, because you hit the point that I was about to ask you right now, which is about EU level labeling scheme, because so far, because of the Europe open market, there is no possibility that a national brand becomes mandatory. It needs to be done at European level. And we have seen examples from France and from Spain. They have their own voluntary labels, right? To certify meat and the origin of this meat. And they do play a role. And there are even very good case studies on how this is working in other European countries, like in Holland, for example, and in many others. But if they are voluntary, if they are voluntary, then they will not really make the difference in the way that prices are set up. So my next question, and maybe this is open not only to Carlos. Yeah, you can.
If you allow me, Barbara, because I would like to kindly or slightly disagree with the last thing you said about the necessity of this type of labeling being compulsory, voluntary, etc. So voluntary labeling is already in place, and it's a good way also for producers to add value to their products. So nothing prevents, we are in discussion about extensive livestock production, to valorize the products because of the way they are being produced, be it just the origin, which would be very simple, but also the methods of production, that can be valorized by the operators and label it and inform consumers. So I think we should move away from this idea that everything has to be labeled, because otherwise the consumer, they already have the possibility, and we already see in the market products which are differentiated, and the consumers can go for them. So I think it's just to temper a bit the expectations on this labeling thing.
Okay, well, yeah, of course, voluntary plays a role, and I know that the more informed consumers and the one that have highest power of acquisition, they will probably go for those. The thing is, what kind of system do we want? And this is a rhetoric question. I'm not expecting any answer, but which kind of system are we heading to if in the end we just allow that more environmental damaging systems are being done at the same level as more environmental friendly schemes, and if in the end there is no price differentiation, which allows the ones who deliver less environmental benefits to keep selling their products at a lower price, well, but let me go to the chat or the Q&As. There are some questions here. One, I think it's very easy to answer, and I believe it's for you as well, Carlos, which is, where can we find each member state's fund allocations from the CAP?
It's a good question. I don't know where you can find it yet. It will be, there will be certainly at a given moment some summaries, etc., made public. You know that not all the CAP plans have been approved yet. There are some summaries already in the DG Agri website, and I'm pretty sure that at a given moment there will be fiches with a summary per member state. But I'm not sure that's the case already for all of them. Certainly, under the current system we have now, direct payments, etc., this is available in the DG Agri website, and I'm pretty sure it will be available soon.
Okay. Meanwhile, there were some people with their hands raised, but I think they've lowered their hands already, because the questions that we have on the chat box are mainly comments. Like Linda said, how is it possible that we have so many knowledge, scientific knowledge on what to do and how to go for a good sustainability, but why are governments not taking the right steps to apply those programs and politics? Maybe some of the other participants would like to share your opinion, as you have been working at a local and a regional level. So what do you think is hindering our governments to really take good policy that promotes and helps differentiating extensive livestock from intensive production systems?
Well, I think that there is a lack of ambition in those politics. We can see that extensive livestock is a strategic field. We know that we need it to manage landscapes, to prevent wildfires, to adapt to climate change. But we have been unable to promote a good policy framework. Actually, the rules are bent in favor of other production systems. And we don't acknowledge the whole set of services that we are getting from the extensive livestock. And in these conditions, we can't do everything on a voluntary basis that consumers are willing to pay more. That's a good starting point, but we also need a change in the rules. We also need that the government acknowledge that they need to have livestock grazing on the field. We need to improve the way that extensive livestock relates to wildlife. We need to expand the positive action of extensive livestock on biodiversity. And we can't do this without a proper definition and a proper differentiation. If there is not an extensive livestock directive or extensive livestock law that frames the whole extensive livestock production, we won't be able to keep going. We will assist to a progressive closing of extensive livestock farms because they don't have the tools to manage in the scenario that politics have created just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for your vision on this topic. Okay. There are two people with their hands raised. I would rather that you write your comments directly than to give you the voice because, well, I think it will be harder. So if you want, you can just write down. I've seen Judith commented that you have been trying to make Food Hub sustainable for the last 4 years, and there might be a solution, there might be a different business model. I really like the example that Louise brought us from this decentralized slaughterhouse. And normally, or there might be a good solution there on having a decentralized system or a mobile slaughterhouse. This could also, for example, solve some of the problems in Portugal in building up these short supply chains. So there are many opportunities and different ways of looking. And my call is that we might keep connected and share good practices, because in the end of the day, this is how we learn, and this is how we can try to make things different. On my side, it's all. I'm grateful that you all joined us and you stood with us until so long. Before we go, I will pass it on to my colleague Maria. She will do the conclusions, but before that, I just want to tell you that in the next or in the coming week, you'll be receiving on your inbox all the materials that were shared here today, and also many of the outcomes that we produced during the LifeAdapt project. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much once more. For me, it was a great pleasure to have you all present, and thank you so much to the panelists to share that you have shared your knowledge and your experience. Thank you. Maria.
So in a couple of minutes, just I want to highlight some ideas that was shared today. That one of that is the climate change is a reality and have an impact, a very, very strong impact in the south of Europe, but also in the whole Europe, as we saw. It's very important design a smart adaptation strategy, create more systematic adaptation. So integrate the different strategy at the national and the European level for make a really, really difference. It's also important to consider the necessity of make a faster adaptation. We cannot take too much time on do it. It's important also to make a fair attribution of climate change responsibility. So it's not the same grace versus eat feed livestock farming. in terms of resilience, ecosystem service, habitability, biodiversity care, so on. So it's important also to try to improve these main talents. It's very agreed for all the participants today that it's important diversity that support the pasture, the extensive livestock system. There is a lot of biodiversity on herbs, invertebrate also that live in this system, but it's a trend of abandon of pasture in Europe. So it's important to make a really a good strategy to stop this situation. Also, interesting concept I think that's important to keep, that is the contribution to the society that the extensive livestock system gives is not only for the consumer, but it's the whole society through the different ecosystem services that provide. The scarcity of water, the increasing of drought situation, it's a very important problem we have to face. We have to create a more democratic water consumption between the different sectors. And it's very important to try to professionalize the sector to make a successful adaptation to climate change in this kind of farm system. Of course, that we recognize that extensive livestock system have modeled the landscape in Europe, and this pressure in the abandonment of this traditional system with this less recognition that we recognize today, force us, the whole society, to develop a long-term vision for the rural areas, as Isabel showed us today. It's very important to work in this, and its extensive livestock system is the main activity of this rural area. So it's very important to include in a very proper way. The communication will be a very important focus on the next work for all of us. It's very important to communicate in a good way and in an appropriate way to the different stakeholders. So this is a shared challenge from. Of course, that livestock production is have an important role in economic in Europe. Have of course that have negative impact as any system, but have a main and strong point that we have to focus. Some interesting issues also is the strategy of the European Commission to promote the practices that minimize the use of external input, considering the current geopolitical context, and livestock system have a very important role here. It's also important to don't forget that the European Commission working in this and improve the response to societal demand of food and health, and here we also have an important role, and the communication of the system is important also for here. And in terms of CAP, I like to highlight this one size fits all. It's not like that, as was recognized. So it's important that more than half of the budget will be distributed eco-regime, eco-scheme to support the farmers to make a more sustainable production, and extensive livestock, as we saw, is a part of the eco-scheme in 20 of the member states. That is an interesting number that I think we have to keep. I think that is also interesting to focus in these strategies of promote different way to face the obstacle for short channels. So as we saw in the Jocelyn presentation, is a very complex a step that the farmer have to give to, in fact, commercialized through this short channel. It's necessary a very strong support at different levels of training, marketing, and qualified also human resources. So something is important to have in mind if we want to focus. And also, of course, the slaughterhouse restriction that we have now is something that we have to face, and it's something where we have to work on the future. I want to close my conclusion with the necessity of create capacity building and to join the whole stakeholder on these chains to try to face this main challenge, but also to give the opportunity to this wonderful system that is our extensive livestock system to keep alive and stronger in the future. So it's everything from my side. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Maria. And thank you all again to all of you. Thank you, Carlos, for joining us. And I hope we can have other discussions like this as fruitful as this one was. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch finally, and have a lovely week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye to everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.